Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, yeah, it's Kachi once again, and first and foremost, I really want to appreciate all of you for your support so far. For those that subscribe to my YouTube channel, for those that have viewed my various videos, starting from the tailwind video and to the bank design with tailwind 2, and also it's another one, the Twitter clone. Yeah, if you haven't seen the Twitter clone, please go check it out. It's really cool. I really want to appreciate everyone for your support and your messages. And since I started the channel, I just don't know what it's going to look like in the long run, but I'm very excited. I'm very excited, honestly. So welcome once again, and also welcome to a new year. Yeah, 2023. Wow, I'm really excited. I'm really excited. You need to see me now, I'm blushing. Okay, let's go straight to it. Today I want to show you guys, I want to take you guys through JavaScript function. Yeah. I've been working on JavaScript recently. You know, my previous video has really been static, so I decided to add some functionality. So I felt to start with the very beginning. So let us go straight to VS Code, where I'll be showing you guys and explaining more on functions on JavaScript. So let's start with functions. What are functions in JavaScript? So these are our first target here. What's function in JavaScript? Basically, functions are reusable block of code that groups together a sequence of statements to perform a specific task. Functions are the main building blocks of the program. They allow the code to be called many times without repetition. So functions are a way of writing reusable code. Reusable code in the sense that code that you can actually use a couple of times without having to rewrite it. There's this principle of programming that it's widely known as a dry, with acronym dry, meaning don't repeat yourself, basically. So you're writing a couple of code and you have to repeat it every time again. So that isn't the perfect way of writing code. So most times you want to write a code and you want to use it in various places in your app or your project, and you don't want to actually start recoding it again, writing it out again. So you just have to write a function for it and use the functions in places where you would naturally have actually written your code once again. So I'll just give us an example to help explain what I'm trying to say here. So let's say you want to calculate, for instance, the area of the rectangle. Yeah. So let's say you want to calculate the area of a rectangle. You start by declaring a variable. We know that to calculate an area of a rectangle is basically your width times your height. So your width times your height. So let's give the width. Let's say width is 10, and let's say your height is equal to 15. So your area would be is equal to your width times your height. That's the area. So your width is 10, your height is 15. So your area is width times height. So how do we now get the area? We can simply get our area by console logging it in your terminal or your inspect if you're using your software, your Chrome. If you're using Chrome or Opera or whichever one you're using, you can just inspect and check out it. But let us console log this out. And see console log area. So I'll open my terminal and I'll type node index and enter, and you see my area is what, 15? Yep, 15. So if you do 15 times 10, it equals to it's equal to 150 basically. So let me reduce this down a bit so you can see that. So yeah, so this area. Now let me explain what's happening now. We are creating a variable called width, and we are giving this variable a number called 10. So this width is 10. We are saying let our height of the rectangle, let the height be 15. And we are saying let the area be the result of multiplying the width with the height. If you get that right. So the width we already know is 10 and the height we already know is 15. So the area will actually become the result of multiplying width with height. So now if we want to know what's the area, so we say okay, console.log area. So console.log is like printing it out on your terminal. That's your backend to see what exactly is the result of multiplying these two variables together. So we are console logging it. We realize that the answer is 150 basically. So that's just it. So let's say again we have another rectangle to multiply. So let's call it let width 2 equals to 24, okay, and let height 2 equals to height 40. Let's get 40. Let area 2 rather equals to with 2 times height 2. Then we console.log area 2. So if we go back to node index again, we'll see that the result of this is 24 times 40, which is 960 rather. So now let's say you have another rectangle to calculate for in another area or in another segment of your code. You now have to write another code that says let width 3 equals to 35. I'm just giving random numbers now, so pardon me. And let height 3 equals to 45. Let area 3 equals to with 3 times height height 3. Then we console.log area 3. If we check this out again, it gives you 1440. So now you see that for each rectangle we have to write the same line of code again and again. So it's like repeating yourself. It's stressful, it's too cumbersome. So function is a way of ensuring that this particular code, this particular block of code, this area here, is written once, and you can use it as many times as possible without having to repeat yourself writing the same code again and again and again and again and again. So that is too stressful. So how would we do this? Writing function. If let's say we want to write a function that calculates the area and the height, calculate the area rather of a rectangle without having to repeat ourselves again for each rectangle, how are we going to do this? Basically, we're going to have to write a function for that, a function that will take care of calculating area. So whichever time we meet area, we'll just call the function, and the function will now calculate the area for us without having to stress ourselves too much. So now we'll go straight to writing the different kinds of functions that we have. We have basically 3 types of functions. We have function declaration, function expression, and arrow function. So before we get to this, let's explain something. Let me explain something. What are parameters and arguments? Let me write the function first, then We'll explain once. It will be easier if I've written the function out first. So let's write the function declaration. So let's write the function for calculating the area. Function, you have to start with the keyword function to tell the computer that you're writing a function. So let's just say functions, we call it calculate area. Calculate area. Then you must keep this parenthesis, the bracket, open and close bracket. Then you open your curly braces, and in that function now, this function is to calculate our area. This is basically function expression, the way to write function expression. So now you have to give this function two parameters. Now what are parameters? Let me go back to explain. Parameters are placeholders we add when defining our functions. They represent the actual values to be included in the code. Now our functions is, the calculate area function is going to take in two parameters, which is width and the height. Now we know that when you want to calculate a function, you have to take into consideration that when you want to calculate an area, you have to take into consideration that your area would have two aspects, two parameters. That is the width of the rectangle and the height of the rectangle. So those two figures will be given us later. We have to add it as what? As parameters to our functions. Let me comment this out so it doesn't really clash with our function. Comment this out. Yep. So now this is the width and the height. So the function is going to do what? It's going to return width times height. So now this is it. So this is just the function. This is just it. This is basically it. So we write the function calculate area, and we put it two parameters: the width of the rectangle. Because if you want to calculate the area of a rectangle, you have to take into consideration that the rectangle has a width and the rectangle has an height. And timesing the width with the height gives you what? The height. So now, let me correct something here. Let's give it area equals to width times height, and what we are going to do is to return the area. Now this is easier because then we will be storing the result of multiplying the width and the height to a new variable called area. Now in the previous way I did it, which is this, would only be giving you this particular it won't the result of multiplying width and height. It won't store it in a variable. So we need to store it in a variable so that we can reuse it later on. So I'll go back to storing it in a variable. So this is just it now. So we now have our area, which is width times height. So now next thing to do is to call this area. So to call this function rather. So to call the functions, we just call it calculate area in a parenthesis, and then we now give a figure. We now giving the figures the values that represent the arguments. So what are arguments? Arguments are the actual values we use when calling the functions outside the block of code. Now, once you open the curly braces and you close the curly braces, this here is a block of code rather. So we have within the block of code, we have our area, which is width times height. So we then return the area. So now when we are returning our calculate area, when we are calling the function out, what do? We basically have to calculate for the area by inputting values that will take the place of this width and that will take the place of the height. So let's say the width is what? Let's use this. Let's say the width is 10 and the height is 15. So let's write here 10, 15. So to get this result out, we have to console log this function. So we console.log. Now remember, console.log is like printing it in your terminal so you can see the result. So if you go to index and we put it out, what do we see now? we have 150, which is basically the same result we had when we console log it the first time. So if you do 15 times 10 times 15 rather, it gives you 150. So now, what's the benefit of writing this? Let's now say in another aspect of another area of our code, we want to call this same function, but this time around our width is now 20 and our height is now 7. Let's say height is 7. Then you now console.log to print it out in the terminal. So what do you see? If you go to node.index, the answer is what? 140. So you see, you don't have to write a new line of this again. It doesn't. Just copy again. Just copy and you paste. Let's take the figure. Let's say width is 32 and the height is 45. We just have to replace 32 with 45, and then we do it again. It gives you 1440. So basically, we're not repeating the same line of code over and over and over again. So you just copy, paste, change the figure, copy, paste, change the figure. It's much more easier than writing a new line of code again and again and again and again and again. It's much more easier. Now you say, okay, this is really simple, but imagine if your line of code was so much can imagine you now have to start writing so many so many codes, which is not actually easy. It's not actually reliable. It's not the best way to do things. So that is the first way of writing a function. Now there's another way of writing a function now, which is called function expression. So what I will just do is copy this so we don't waste time. Copy this, paste it here, and just modify it again. So this is it. This is it. This is function expression. Let me give a space so we just know. Now, function expression, unlike function declaration, function expression stores the function in a variable. A variable is like a container. So once you are calling this variable, once you want to call this function, you can console.log calculate area. You now give it the area of 34 and 76. Let's say the width is 34 and the height. Let me comment this out first so we not have any distraction. So let's say the width is 34 and the height is 76. So now we console.log calculate area and we have 254. Now what's the difference between this line of code now, calculate area equals to, and this particular line of code here, function calculate area? Now the difference is we are storing this function in a variable called calculate area. So now this calculate area would always evaluate to this function. So unlike this other one, the function is just there, we're just declaring it. We're not storing it in any variable. So we cannot actually use the result of this meaningfully, if I must say. But then if you are storing this function in a variable, wherever in any aspect of our code we call this variable, it will always evaluate to this function. So the same way that we stored width in this particular area, we stored width to 10, height to 15, area to the result of multiplying width with height. In the same way we are storing this function to this variable called calculate area. So wherever you just you call this function, it works for you. It just runs for you. So then the last way of calling a function is by writing the EA6 version, the EA6 arrow function. Now what's EA6? EA6 is a short form of ECMAScript 6, like an update in JavaScript, which with features that allows you to write cleaner and more concise code. Now this code that we are writing here is very, even though it's not really that long, but I bet you it's ES6 will make it look very long. When you do an ES6 error function code, this now looks very long. Yeah, let me just do it out for you to show you guys. Let's say cons. I'll now comment this out, sorry, so that we don't mix it up. Now, by doing this, it tells JavaScript to ignore this line of code, so it just clears out of our system. So let's say calculate area, const calculate area equals to our function now. Yeah, equals to our function, which will now take in two parameters, width and height. So the width is what, 34, and the height is what, 76. Now we now put our fat arrow key, which is an equal to sign with a greater than sign. Now we now saying, or rather, sorry, there's a mistake here. This is supposed to be a parameter. Width, comma, height. This is supposed to be a parameter. So now we now go for that to say equals to width multiply by height. Width multiplied by height. So this is basically it. This is just it. So multiply width by our height gives you our function. So now let's call this function again. I'll console log this. I'll copy this out and print it out again. Let me copy this. Console log calculate area 3476. Let's see the result. Voila, 2584. So now you see that this particular line of code, what happens to it? Just one line gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. Okay, minus this function expression, that is 3 lines of code. So it's very much easier to write a function, arrow function. First, what do? You define your function by giving it a variable, storing it in a variable name, which is called calculate area equals to, you put in your parameter. Remember, your parameter is what? Let me explain the parameter again because you might be having issues with it. Parameters are placeholder we add when defining our functions. These parameters, width and height, they're like placeholders. They are there because we don't know yet what our width will be or what our height will be later on. So we just put in a parameter there to represent that figure we'll be inputting later on. So we now say let width and height evaluate to width times height. So if you times your width with your height, whatever result is you are getting gives you what? Your calculate area. So now calculate area is now the result of evaluating your width times your height. So now we come to our console log statement and we calculate area. We now put in our height, our width to be 34 rather, and our height to be 76. Now they must stay in this order. 34 would always represent your width. If you change it, you are changing if you change 34 to 76, your width will now become 76. So they must be in the order you want it to be. So basically that's just it. That's just it for writing functions. It's very simple. So let's say let's just say you want to calculate the width times height tomorrow. You don't need to stress yourself too much. You just, what do? Write out a function for that. So tomorrow you can always, call these same functions as many times as possible, which could be your area tomorrow can be, let's say you want to calculate for a new rectangle. The width can be 12 and the height will be 23. If you consider this statement, is it gives you 276, which is the result of evaluating width times height. So that does it. And I think I'll end here for now. So this video don't get too long, too bulky. So thank you for listening, for watching, and hopefully you have a better understanding of function expression. And if you are still confused, don't worry, this is going to be a playlist. So I will be creating more videos where I'll be explaining some of the key concepts in JavaScript, such as variables, that is the cons, the let, the var, and explaining what are the different kinds of operators in in JavaScript. We are doing an operator here. We are doing times, width times height. This times here is an operator, and it's like calculation times multiplication, addition, just your simple mathematics, or simple arithmetic operators. So we will also have just explain some other JavaScript key functions, key words that we'll be using that will help you understand this video better. So just keep in touch with this channel, and hopefully we see soon. Thank you.